Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Diane O'Connell. I am the immediate past chair of the international section of the New York State Bar Association. Today, we have a presentation of COVID versus legislation internationally. And what we're going to do is we're going to walk you through a website that was set up to track legislation internationally for informational purposes. I'm going to introduce Ulrich Fobian, who is the co-chair of the South African chapter of the international section, and he will be our main host today. Thank you.
Thanks, Diane. I'm sure it must be a strange feeling just to have recently on the 1st of June handed over. How do you feel?
I feel oddly like my calendar is oddly open now, and my email is reduced exponentially. So it was a really good year, and it was melancholy to pass it over.
I'm sure.
I really enjoyed doing it, but I'm really glad to actually have it behind me as well. So now I can focus on other things.
Well, it was an honor to be under you, and I think you led so well and did a stellar job from what I saw. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so welcome everybody who has joined or who will see this on YouTube at a later stage. We are busy with the series Golly, what a day. And at the moment, there is golly, what a lot of legislation around the globe happening with the regulations related to coronavirus, or sometimes there's not so much or there aren't a lot of regulations, but it's more a soft lockdown as we've seen in Japan. But still, there's a lot going on with regards to coronavirus in the many different countries. And as we start to open up across the globe, what are the laws saying about how we open up or how we stay locked in at this stage? And so there's this fabulous website that is, I don't think at this stage it's all the countries on there, but it's quite far developed, and we're going to get a peek into how it is progressing at this stage. And it is live, so you can go have a look at many different countries that are already there. And with us, with Diane and myself today, who are going to be discussing this, is Marco Rostater. I hope my pronunciation is as good as it can be. I'm sorry where it's not. And he's practicing at a law firm called Hamburger, and that's in Zurich. And then we have Ruggero Sammartano, and he's at not Hot Dog, but he's at Law Fed, and that's in Milan. So with us are those two attorneys, and we are so grateful that you could join us, and we're so excited to hear about this website. And we're going to look briefly, just in summary, at the project itself, the aim, and the approach and development plan. And then we'll also look at some interesting laws in place, and also in some countries where there may already be some provisions that have been declared unconstitutional, which is quite interesting, or invalid, where there is no constitution. So anyway, let's move right along. So Marco and Ruggero, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Ulrich. Hello to everyone.
Thank you. Nice for being here. You pronounced my name correctly.
Oh, wow. It's amazing.
Well, the rest was wrong, but the name was correct.
Okay, well.
Now I want a barbecue, though. I have a craving for barbecue.
Okay. Okay, so we can barbecue later, but at this stage, if you'd like to just kick us off, Marco, I think it was your baby, if I may say that, in terms of coming up with this idea. And how did you come up with this idea, and why did you feel so strongly about that?
Yeah, it was about I think at the beginning of March, when this coronavirus spread in Europe and also came to Switzerland. I noticed that the government is taking a lot of measures against coronavirus. And this was unprecedented because all this legislation was made as emergency legislation. So most of this legislation was imposed by the federal government, being the Federal Council. And this is, in Switzerland, this is quite, I say, rather unusual, because usually we have 26 states and they are allowed to impose the law. And if they are not going to be active, the federal government is going to be active. So this was a point when the federal government jumped in and made new legislation. And I thought it would be helpful to track this legislation, because already for me as a lawyer, it was difficult to keep up with this new legislation. And to have a bigger picture, I could imagine that as other countries will have been facing the same problem, there would be even more challenges to understand and have the overview of all these countries.
Great. So did you originally just come up with a plan to track your country and then Europe and then spread from there, or did you think immediately, let's do one for a global website?
I believe Marco is on mute.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Okay. I try again. I was saying that since I'm practicing in an international law firm, like most of our business law firm, most of our clients have international background, and I know how important for business is law in different countries. So at the beginning, I thought it wouldn't just be worth to do it of Switzerland. It would be more exciting to do it about all relevant countries in terms of business.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you didn't say more important, you said more exciting. So there was a bit of passion there involved in finding out this information. If I can understand, getting the answers and actually knowing how to operate is really important.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I knew that I would never be able to do it by my own, since I'm only know the Swiss law. Like this also how we are advising. We're not advising about foreign law. So it quickly came into my mind that I need to connect with colleagues. So I recently was at an event of Aisha. It was a winter seminar in Madonna di Campio in Italy. And I met connect to a lot of international colleagues, and I used this connection to start with this website. So I asked their colleagues who would be interested to join my website or join this project, and this is how it started. Yeah.
Amazing. And Ruggiero, is that where you got involved?
Exactly. Actually, we got in touch this way through a WhatsApp group where Marco shared his project. And since I do like projects, challenging projects, I said, why not? And I offered my availability to cover Italy. And what Marco stressed immediately is that he had already 10,000 Italian lawyers on the Italian side. Now, jokes apart, he said, there is already a colleague involved, but my project, this project, wishes to be an open source project in order that there is no egoism, let's say. So we have to try to offer the best information and to cover as much as possible all the topics related to COVID, and therefore you are more than welcome to join in as much as the other contributor, Italian contributor, is not offended by that. And I knew the other contributor, so it was nice. We got in touch. And by the way, as to Italy, then we had other colleagues joining, and therefore now we are 5, and we have been able to cover, I would say, the majority of topics concerning COVID in Italy.
Fascinating. So you said you wanted to avoid. Yes.
But sorry. Since I'm a little bit crazy, as you are, at least as I understood you, I said, no, such a wonderful project cannot stay amongst a little number of countries, although Marco started already with, I believe, 8 or 10 countries. Said, no, we have to spread it out a little bit more. And then I allowed myself to suggest Marco, or to offer myself in helping to find other countries. And Marco listened very carefully because he is very careful. And then I think he said yes. And therefore I started to to contact some of my friends working in different jurisdiction, asking for whether they were available to take the time to cover their country. And in principle, the answer was, I would say, positive. And from there, we moved on. Is this correct, Marco?
Yes, I agree with that. I was happy that Ruggiero volunteered to join the project because it was a perfect opportunity to share the work. So he became the general coordinator, acting for gaining new or acquiring new contributors. And I could focus on content and technical issues of the website. It was also a benefit for me because I'm a younger lawyer. My network is not as big as the one of Ruggiero. Yeah, it was a perfect, I would say, symbiosis. So from the beginning.
Great.
In other words, Marco said that I'm older than him.
Yes, more hair, but he's older.
Actually, if I may add something.
I can relate, Marco, to that.
Does it mean that you have the same age?
Not sure about that, but we have the same beautiful hairstyle, which you don't have yet. We'll get there one day.
It will come. Don't worry. Don't worry.
Your inspiration.
I know.
I will say, when it came into my inbox, I got so excited about the project and the website because it feeds into my dialogue that one day I'm going to rule the entire world. So I said, this is my opportunity to try to get the word out on the fact that we can have a common goal of looking at one body of law or one subject matter across the globe.
Nice.
and bring it all together so that we can have a collective response to it, as opposed to having everything separated country by country, jurisdiction by jurisdiction. So it excited me a great deal when it came through. I was like, this is just absolutely amazing. This is my dream come true. So thanks for
I can just
set it up.
I just second that, Diana, especially also in our country, we have to we can consider foreign law. So in this time, having access to that, and as we'll discuss later, many provisions we're currently in level 3. Still no smoking, drinking is allowed, but in level 3 and level 4, we've had a lot of that declared unconstitutional in this country, and I think it's quite useful to be able to compare to what's happening in other countries. So I was just as thrilled as you. I didn't want to rule the world, but yeah.
So now, Ulrich, you're allowed to drink, but you can't smoke?
Yeah, it's very interesting. So for over 2 months, many South Africans who smoke, and I don't smoke, although you asked me before if I run and smoke, but I'm just going to move past that. But
I'm
many South
by the rules, so.
No, I mean, we've had in terms of a hard lockdown, we have had a hard, in every sense of that word, lockdown, but for over 2 months. But yeah, you cannot smoke, and it's got to do with the reasoning it's health related in terms of susceptibility to getting the disease or the virus. Sorry, if you do smoke, and so they just want to eliminate that. There's been a lot of discussion and court applications about that, and they're busy redrafting the rules for level 3 because of this unconstitutional order or ruling that occurred. But the drinking has been allowed, but there has been discussion, and sorry, we will get back to the website. There has been discussion about getting rid of alcohol or banning it again, because the increase in cases and accidents on the roads actually has meant that there's less space for beds for patients contracting the virus. So there's been some discussion on that. So the liquor stores have been very busy.
Yeah. And here, I'm based in Brooklyn, New York, and just as a very brief update, we're still on lockdown. Monday started phase 1 of opening up, but obviously 2 weeks ago started phase protest on the Black Lives Matter issue, and people have been marching the streets here in protest. So I'm curious to find out how that impacts case increase in the next week or so.
Have you seen an increase yet or not yet?
Have I seen?
Has there been an increase in the city already, or?
Not yet. The protest started about 2 weeks ago. So
yeah,
I would venture to guess that with the incubation period of the virus and the asymptomatic time period, that about this week going forward is going to start to show whether or not there's been an increase in cases because of the protests. So
would that possibly reverse the phased in approach, reintegrating into normal society, or has the governor said anything on that?
I think it probably will, and to be frank, I'm ready to apply for asylum in Ireland at this point. It's been for my family, it's been almost 4 months of lockdown. So
wow.
You know, we like each other and we love each other, but there's a limit to how much time we can spend together. Anyway,
if I can
back to the website.
Yeah, back to. I just have a question.
Oh,
go for it.
I'm sorry, just to say, in Italy it lasts almost 2 months. So I mean, it was really tough. Divorce lawyers increasing their business.
In Italy, it seemed like in the United States, we were getting news from across the world of how people were handling the lockdown. And in Italy, they had pictures of police officers in the middle of the street with a boombox dancing in the street, and people exercising on balconies and toasting each other with selfie sticks. And, you know, it looked like it was a lot more fun than it's been here.
This is the Italian way to solve problems. I mean, if you have to cope with them, fine, but at least let's find a way to amuse ourselves.
Yeah.
It was fun. DJ sets, people singing, really sopranos.
Yeah.
I saw some of that online. It looked amazing. Ruggiero, you said divorce cases or divorce litigation went up, and the divorce lawyers were smiling somewhat, although they were also in lockdown. But as far as I know, you are still married, but you also had a very interesting situation where your wife was working across border, if I'm not mistaken.
Hopefully she's not attending this webinar. Huh? Otherwise you're pushing her to divorce. This wouldn't be nice. Yes, it's true.
I hope not.
It's true. Me living in Milan and she living in Switzerland made things a little bit complicated, in particular with two little children. She resumed work, I would say, 3 weeks ago. And at a certain point, they told her, look, it's nice that you have family in Italy. We don't want to block you because we understand family is important. However, you have an important role within the company, and therefore you must be as an example for everyone. So if our country does not suggest to go to Italy, it would be good that you don't do that. And she's very Swiss from this point of view, and she said, okay, I abide by. And therefore, me and my two little children had to start an adventure lasting 8 hours of train trip from Milan to Lausanne. We had to change 4 times the train, and we were stopped at the borders, and they asked why we were moving, to explain the mother, the link, and so it was really complicated. But when you have an important goal in life, then everything becomes easier.
Wow. Wow. Sure.
While, I'm sorry, if I may, another friend who is living in Switzerland had to come back to Italy, but he's working in Switzerland. At the Italian border, he was stopped asking, would you like to, why are you looking for going back to Italy? He said, I have my family, my wife gave birth 1 month ago. I would like to see my children. He said, fine, I understand, but the Italian borders are closed. And if you are not resident in Italy, you are not allowed to go back. While myself, being resident in Italy, I was allowed to go back. Although I had to make a quarantine period.
I can relate to your friend or colleague because I'm actually working in Japan, but currently in South Africa, and the borders there are closed to foreign nationals. It's possibly changing soon, but I cannot get in there until that happens. So I relate to your friend. Yeah.
And it was tough because he made 2 hours drive to the border, and he said, they said, unfortunately, no way, go back.
Sure. And that's devastating. If I can just get back to one point on the website, I mean, this is but this is all really relevant, and this is exactly how we like to run these sessions. We don't like it to be too formal. So, Marco, if you're getting very angry there, we are coming back to you.
I'm not, but I'm listening.
Okay, but I just want to know, in terms of the aim, I know you said it's, Ruggiero, you said it's not got to do it all with ego, so it's open source, but also I'm guessing the aim is not to provide legal advice, but to have a legal resource.
Yeah, that's an important point for me. I also noted that the law firms were, which is good, they were quickly producing, let's say, information sheets on COVID-19 virus and providing their assessment of the current legislation. But what I was missing there, and I couldn't find it by myself, is a source where you have access to the legislation, right? To have access to source legislation. And I wanted, maybe it also comes a bit from background of fake news. I wanted to give people the opportunity to make up their own mind and have their own resources. And I thought it would be a good thing to have a website where people have direct access to the legislation. And this is compiled by lawyers who should know where the legislation is. And it shouldn't be advice, it should be a help to easy access this source information.
Fantastic.
And
so I'm sure in that regard, you don't guarantee that it is correct. And I know in some countries, especially I think again of South Africa, we're jumping all over the place and going from level 5 to level 3 now, and then this is illegal and that's legal. That there is a bit of a lag in terms of the updated legislation. And I think I did see on the website that you do qualify that.
Yeah, exactly. That's that's an issue. I don't want to go into much detail what it means from the perspective of an individual who's bound by the law. It's somehow different from what I learned at university, but to go back to the example of the borders, in Switzerland, it was announced in middle of May that Switzerland is opening the border to France, Germany, and Austria. And on Monday, they announced they're going to open the border to all EU countries and EFTA countries. So
Italy included.
Yeah, Italy.
Now, I have a question, because what I see in this, and I know that we're leaving our attendees in suspense. They actually want to see the website, but this is going to facilitate my taking over the world. So it's a selfish question, but it seems to me that in compiling this legislation from different jurisdictions, and as it continues to grow, that once the world gets a handle on how to handle an event like this if it happens again or when it happens again,
right,
that this information as compiled will be a fantastic tool to be able to analyze how the various countries' legislations were put in place and compile a more unified approach that could potentially be adopted by, you know, WHO or the UN or, you know, some organization globally, that in the event that a pandemic hits globally again, that here's legislation that's worked, mechanisms that have worked, compiled globally on how different countries have handled it, and provide recommendations on what steps could be taken legislatively in the event, like the next time this occurs. So I look at it as an amazing way to compile and stay on top of, as opposed to try to do this after the, you know, the dust settles and we're all, you know, dealing with the aftershock of it. Doing it real time, I think, is really a valuable exercise to do, because it'll make things easier in the future. So
absolutely, I
actually,
second that.
if I may, one of the follow-up project Marco and I have also with the other contributors is to try to work a little bit those information maybe with universities and researchers in order to try to bring to offer to the table an analysis or a comparative analysis of this flood of legislation, which we believe might be very useful, as you were saying, Diane. So this is already actually in the target. If I may, I will go back to what you said at the beginning, which I found it very interesting, is the fact that what we realize is that, as usual, unfortunately, everybody is going its own way, and instead of taking advantage of the experiences or the successful experiences in other countries, everybody is more keen to follow its own traditional path in its own countries with the usual restriction. And this is, at least to me, a little bit strange, and goes in line with another comment I have and I share with you for discussion, if ever you wish, is the fact that how it was dealt the issue of vaccine. I mean, my impression is that instead of trying to focus in a joint team all the efforts, money, investments from a public point of view, obviously not from a private point of view, but from a public point of view, in order to speed up the process of finding a vaccine, we found the Swiss that said, yeah, we have a vaccine. Then the Americans, yes, and maybe at the same time we want to buy it from another one. And then we had the Indians. I mean, instead of working together, at least to me, the World Health Organization could have led at least a little bit in a more joint way this effort.
Right. I think we've said that the website is fantastic, and I know a lot of people are asking for it. And for those who are not joining the webinar now, but later are viewing it on YouTube or somewhere else, you're not going to see that the link was just sent. So we are going to go there now, and we'll give the link as well to the website. But just to add to your point, Ruggiero, I think that one of the reasons that this is a fantastic initiative is that although now people are generally locked down in their home country and are focusing on regulations that are affecting them in their home country or home state, as we start to open up, we're going to see the need to understand regulations in different jurisdictions even more. And obviously there are some that already need that, but I think we are just going to escalate the amount of people who require this amazing resource. So I think we're going to see, I think people just went tunnel vision into their own country for a while, just to try and cope and understand what was going on. But okay, if we can just move along to get the,
just jump in on this point. I'm sorry. This was another goal, or it's another goal of the website. I have to wish that at least it facilitates a little bit the economic, like the economic walk back after the lockdowns, because I hope that business can get some information about what is happening in other countries and what's the regulation. I mean, it's not, as I said, it's not an advice, but at least it can give them some idea of what is going on, and at least I hope it helps the economy a little bit to get faster back on track. Yeah, that would be great. I mean, just
and world domination
for small companies. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Before we proceed further, I just wanted to say thank you
Right.
to Antonio Prida, who sent a link to all of us with information about Mexico. So what I did was in the chat is I submitted to all the attendees and the panelists the list of countries that was provided to me by Marco of countries of interest that they would like to add to the website. So if you have any information or expertise or contacts in those jurisdictions, please reach out to them and provide information so that the website could be built upon using those countries as well. So.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, I hand over to Ruggiero. This is his task. He's coordinating the countries, and I think we are happy to have as much as country as we can get. So
wonderful.
Yeah, we take. We're happy to take new contributors.
Apparently, it seems an easy job, but in reality, it's not that easy. I mean, I use different just to share because it might be interesting for all of you. I shared my personal contact. I use my personal contact. I use the association in which Marco and I are active, which is AIJA. I use the European Court of Arbitration Network I'm involved in, but even IBA, UIA, IPBA commissions, or in general members of commissions. And then I'm a member of the International Commission of the Milan Bar Association. So I had some colleagues providing me some other names. I'm member of, my firm is member of an international network called IR Global. And again, we found others. There is another group I'm member of, which is International Advisors Association. And Francis Campbell helped me on that. In other words, I try to use different ways to connect to people. Usually there were some criteria, which was a personal knowledge, possibly a working knowledge. Then we have opted for a size that had to be at least a medium size with an international approach in order to try to offer, I don't want to say a standardized way of contributing, but certainly to help people have a similar approach from the different countries. And I was saying it was not so easy because at first you want to say, of course, yes, I want to join, it's a nice project, let's go. But then immediately after comes the second question is how much effort it entails. Do I have or will I have the time to work on it and so on? And therefore, not always there was a positive answer to the second question. But usually I have to say that when there was a personal relationship, things moved on very quickly because apart from efforts and hurdles, when you have a personal link, people are happy to make a joint experience in a project like this.
Great. Before we continue on, I think all of our discussions moving forward, let's have the website up on the screen, if that is okay, Marco.
Yes, I'll try to share.
And for those, for those who are not able to join now and join later, I'll just say the website's www.coronavirus-legislation.com. Oh, you can see it
Can you
there.
see my screen? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so this is the entry to the website. You see all current countries in alphabetical order. And let me go to Switzerland because, yeah, this is the page I know the best. How the concept of the website works is that to each country, we looked for contributors and they are responsible for their subpage. So they are creating the content by their own. This website is a collaborative website, which is hosted by Google. So all of these authors or contributors have access to the website, and they are writing their contribution by their own. It was important for me to have this because I think it's I have to believe that if someone is responsible on its own for the content, they are more cautious and they are more involved. So I think this is one great aspect about this concept. So once you go to the country website, you see at the beginning, it's the same everywhere. You see who's the author and who you should contact if you have any more questions. It starts with a small introduction about the country, and then there are various aspects about your legislation.
Marco, I'm sorry to stop you quickly.
Yes.
Diane said that she can just see a black screen. I just want to see, I can see the screen. Is anybody else, if anybody else is having an issue, please just drop us a comment. Mm-hmm. Diane, I hope your page, or I hope it shows up.
Yeah, I think I have an unstable connection and it probably downsized what it was doing. I just wanted to make sure that other folks weren't having the same issues. So if you are having issues seeing anything, just send the chat to me or the panelists and we'll see what we can figure out from there. But I would say continue on in the meantime.
Thanks for that.
Yes. I was just skipping back to the entry of the website because I
sorry,
forgot.
just before you sorry for just one more.
Just go. Now I can't see you. Oh.
Yeah.
Can you see the website or?
Now I cannot see the website. I could see it earlier, but it's disappeared.
Okay, give me.
I can see it.
Oh, Tiffany, you can see everything?
As usual.
Yes.
Okay, let me try it again. Maybe it's okay. Let's go it again. Okay.
I see something happening this time. Has started screen sharing.
Yeah, I encourage everyone to go by themselves to the website, and I can talk about it also if you don't see it. Like I was saying, the concept is you have an entry page and you have sub-pages. And you have sub-pages, and the sub-pages are basically have the same structure. Although I know that some legislations need different attendance or have different important points. So I leave it up to the authors to rearrange their sub-page and to delete some issues which are maybe important for Switzerland but not for another country. So what the second last thing I would like to talk about is there's a search function which is in the upper right section of the website. So since it's a Google site, it has a search engine included. You can search for some words or some countries. And there's also an about page which shows the different authors and law firms who contributed to the website. Yeah. That's pretty much about it. We hope to keep it as simple as possible because, like I said, the important thing is information and to provide people access to source information. Yeah.
Yeah, I have two questions that have come in. The
Yes.
first question is from Jennifer Hudson Phillips, who's asked if there's been any collaboration with the WHO, World Health Organization, um, as they may have access to relevant legislation on the matter of the states, of its member states. So I don't know if you've reached out to the World Health Organization.
So far, I didn't reach out. I don't know if the WHO implemented something already. I could imagine that they focus on health legislation, and we have to try to cover as many as important aspects as we could. So
Right.
yeah.
And then the second question I have is from Brad Allen Schwartz.
Marco, can I just ask
about,
maybe, I don't know if the screen is working, but it doesn't
Okay,
seem to be
stop,
working my side. Maybe we can just take it off. Okay,
Yep.
yeah,
Just
maybe it's better. Sorry, Diane, you were going to say something.
Yeah, the next question I have is from Brad Allen Schwartz, who's asking if there's any legislation included on the website from Germany.
Yes, we have a German part. So you go to the German subpage and you will see what our authors wrote about Germany. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. We have actually a very dedicated team from Germany. They're updating. They've already updated several times, so I'm sure she will find some interesting information.
Great. Have you found any particular interesting legislation in the world that is just astounded you, or even in your home country, regulation that was met with some resistance, or anything else that just was fascinating?
You want to go first, Marco?
No, I let you. Go ahead.
Well, actually, we have been reported about some anecdotes, and one that I found fascinating was what happened in Albania, where they passed restrictive measures for vehicles, and in particular, it was not allowed to have more than one passenger in a car, and the passenger had to sit not close to the driver, had to wear mask and gloves. And this might seem awkward, even maybe less for taxi drivers, but usually the situation applies also to common people. And it's strange to have to drive your wife in the back seat on the other side with gloves and mask. Maybe it may be a dream for someone, but usually when you stay at home without gloves and mask and you live a normal life, then it's strange that while you have to jump on a car, you have to take these measures because they are not really protecting yourselves. So sometimes, from my point of view, in all this legislation, what pops up in a strange way is that sometimes there is a difference between form and substance. The form might be perfect, but in the substance, they have no real interest.
I think we just lost Ulrich.
Yeah. I heard an interesting anecdote about Ukraine. So our colleague from there reported to us that there is, at the moment, the Supreme Court judges are challenging a decree from the government, which was imposed on lockdown, stipulating, among others, that cutting the movement, the freedom of movement, freedom of business made restriction on people's everyday life, but also included a cut on wages of the judges. So they are now challenging this decree to be unconstitutional to the Constitutional Court. And yeah, it's from my point of view, from Switzerland, it's interesting to see what different issues are in a decree about coronavirus. So yeah, they're even they can be very various and very broad. Yep.
As to this, also in the Czech Republic, there were issues concerning the Ministry of Health issuing emergency measures, which were challenged in Prague because the Ministry of Health wouldn't have the authority to issue such measures. And again, which surprises me is the way some countries have dealt with the issue of authority in a very soft way, without thinking about who had to issue, or who was entitled to issue this kind of measures. I understand obviously the emergency of the situation, but then, I mean, governments are not prohibited to consult constitutional lawyers in order to be sure that they will take the right measures. Also, because if you don't take, if you don't have authority to issue such measures, you may run into the risk of a lot of challenges, not only from the judges or from an administrative point of view, but even from, let's say, from a civil point of view, in order to seek compensation for damages suffered for illegally taken measures. And on the top of that, there might be even challenges for breach of protections in a country from investors, and this may lead to important civil actions.
All right, I have a burning question that I know everybody wants the answer to. Have you found any difference in the legislation and the impact on countries that are run by women?
Oh.
Because the news, I'll tell you why I'm saying the news has reported here in the United States that countries such as New Zealand, Germany, there was one other where their response to COVID was deemed to be so successful that, for instance, New Zealand has pretty much gone down to 0 cases. And my curiosity,
they have now.
Yeah, is whether or not there was a correlation made, and of course, because there's so much news out there, the quality sometimes isn't necessarily 100%. My curiosity is whether or not there has been any detection of the way legislation was handled by countries run by women, so that those were the results, or is that just an anomaly? Is New Zealand and Germany an anomaly?
I'm happy to leave the answer to Marco.
I'm not putting you on this spot, Rogero, and if your wife is listening, I hope she's proud of this question, so just answer simply.
I mean, from my point of view.
Sorry, I know it's a loaded question. It really is a curiosity because I keep hearing it. So.
Thank you for this interesting question. From my point of view, I can't tell because we haven't made this distinction. I haven't made a deep analysis, and I leave it to the scientists of political studies who will be more qualified to assess such a question. But what I noted from my point of view is that there are some countries who are taking it, at least from the outside, more serious or are more strict than others. So, but it's always difficult, also for example, to take Switzerland as an example. It's a small country, and we have different regions in the mountains which are quite remote, and they haven't had many cases. And we have other regions close to the Italian border or close to the French border, which had much more cases. And so there was a broad, big discussion about how restrict should be the measures for the whole country or for certain regions. And some regions even jumped in by themselves and made more strict regions. So what I could think is that there are several factors which influence the legislation. One might be the cases. Another might be the political surrounding and the political agenda of the leaders. So it would be interesting to look backwards and to see which countries took which measures in which context. I don't know if it's possible to say it already. Yeah.
Actually, if I may add something on that, I perfectly agree with Marco's comment. From my point of view, what has made a difference was the economical power of the country. In the following sense, where the country was poorer, then unfortunately the health system was not ready to face this kind of problem, such as Italy. Unfortunately, we had a very good health system, but not ready to cover a huge number of infected people, and therefore a lot of people died, while Switzerland and Germany, for instance, they are very healthy from an economical point of view, and very rapidly they had been able, if not at the beginning, immediately afterwards, to provide beds for patients and so on. Just to tell you an experience, in Lausanne, which is a city in Switzerland, they had the public hospital. And
I think I lost your chair now. Am I the only one?
No, you're not. I also lost.
Am I back?
Yes,
Yeah,
you're back.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was just saying, Lausanne in a few days was able to use 4 floors of the military hospital, and so it was able to double the number of beds. And in addition to this, going back to the other comment of Marco, it depended also on the political approach or agenda of the government. In Switzerland, I found really good was the instruction to mix public and private health, in order that everybody was ready to provide assistance to infected people. And then they would have seen afterwards who was bearing the costs, how to compensate for that. But immediately, public and private sectors were going in the same direction.
Right.
Actually, there was a law on this. I mean, a decree from the federal government saying that also private health institutions have to take COVID patients. So was it different in Italy? I don't know.
Look, unfortunately, people died in the corridors. So, I mean, yes, I have to say definitely different. Although I must stress a very good word about Italians. In difficult moments, we react very quickly and usually in a creative way and try to solve the problem. Unfortunately, Italy had so high numbers that they were, it was not possible to cope with them. This was the reality. So without beds, without masks, without the other instruments, unfortunately, even with the work of hundreds and thousands of doctors, which was incredible, they worked day and night, and unfortunately, they got infected as well. So a lot of them died because they were not protected in a correct way. It was not possible to face properly and quickly this infection.
Sure.
Yeah, it does seem that I mean, and New Zealand is perhaps an unfair example to use because it is a very small country that's not densely populated and it's isolated from other countries. So cross-border contamination, major city contamination, it really was, it was an ideal location to be able to control it. What I did notice, and I didn't want to send the loaded question of women, but there did, I have to, I have to. It does seem that the response by female leaders was much, again, probably unfair, but there were no negative reports of responses from female leaders. Let's put it that way. Okay.
Very interesting.
Yeah, but here in the United States, the response, because of the structure of the country, the response was so complicated because you have sovereignty of states. So you have 50 individual state governments, then you had local governments like New York City. And so you had the mayor of New York City working with the governor of New York State, working with the president of the United States. And then there's Congress, and there's so many different opinions that trying to get people all on the same page at the same time is, I think, very difficult here. And the United States culture, for those who are not in the United States, folks have a tendency to look at the United States as if it is, we're all Americans, we're all from the United States. But I will tell you that growing up in Brooklyn and living in New York City, other than being human, I have little in common with people who may live in, say, rural Kentucky or Florida or even Massachusetts. So, the United States really is almost like the European Union in the sense that there are 50 different, miniature countries within the same country with different governments and cultures. And when people outside of the United States look at the response of the US, they think of it as one country making a response, and it is one country, but it really is an extremely complicated structure to try to unify into one
absolutely
one response. I mean, it really is, it's very difficult. And legislatively, it's very difficult because what the federal government can do on some ends, the state governments have control over some things and the federal on others, and one can't tell the other what to do. And unless everybody's on the same page. And so it was very interesting, not really the most pleasant experience to witness, but it did point out where the government works and where it doesn't.
Right.
Sorry, did you notice a difference in the US between female governors and male governors in the election?
No, yes and no. I would say that I found a difference in the response. I would say yes from the standpoint that the female governors, and there's not that many of them. I think Michigan is one example, or Minnesota. I can't remember which one she's getting in trouble from the president, but their approach has a tendency to be very much more when things go really bad, you put all your differences aside, team together, roll up your sleeves, and fix the problem, and together, and move forward, and you just deal. You everything else goes out the window, and then when it's solved, then you can go back to fighting or bickering or whatever you want to do. But I find that the difference really was it was between the two party lines of the Democrat versus the Republicans. My impression was that you had states like in the South and in the Midwest that had Republican governors, and they wanted to go back to work really quickly because they had no cases at the time. And, they didn't think that it was needed. And in New York, it felt like the end of the world. And, but then you have towns and cities down south that look at New York like it's a completely different world. So I found the differences in approach was more because of the bickering between the political parties than it was on gender.
Right. It's very interesting, and there's a lot more to say, but it has just so happened that we've also run out of time now. We at is it 12:30 New York time now?
It is, yes. It's
12:30.
It's I can't get a clock up here. Hold on.
Once 1:30.
It's 1:31.
Right, 1:31. Yeah, 7:31 here, and I assume in Italy and Switzerland also.
Yes.
7:31.
Right.
Right.
So I have no additional questions have come through.
Okay, great.
The request was, though, if we, Marco and Ruggiero, if you're comfortable, that we send an email with the link to the website once again, and your contact details with the list of countries that I sent, because I had some folks were asking, they're providing some information, and you can pull that from the link that was sent about Mexico. But I think that getting that information out would be helpful, because then whoever's been on the webinar can reach out to their colleagues as well. And if they have country information on the list that you're looking for, can then send it over and provide it.
It would be great. And maybe we sent you an updated list in order that you
I was just going to say that, yeah.
Okay.
Great. Well, I think that draws this to a close. Thank you so much, Ruggiero and Marco and Diane. It was wonderful to have this discussion, as it always is. And I wish you all the best with this, with the website and the legislation. I hope you get a lot of responses from this webinar, and that you can cover most of the globe.
And thank you very much for sharing it, and thank you for putting in the effort. It's very impressive.
Great.
Thank you very much for the very pleasant chat, and for supporting this project, which is a common project, and you are part of it.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for having us, and thank you for the interesting questions to the audience. And I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, and everybody, thank you for joining and taking the time to listen in. If you do have any comments, you have any questions, if you have any information that you would help move the project forward, an email will be distributed after the webinar, and with contact information. And really, we hope that this has been valuable and you've enjoyed spending the hour with us. So thanks.
Thank you so much.
And now I'm going to go barbecue.
Guess what? Me too. Except we call it a braai.
Okay. Fair enough.
Guess what? We are joining as well, at least virtually.
We could have a virtual barbecue. Braai. Okay.
Braai, barbecue, and then it's definitely time then to get that ukulele out. Then that's behind you.
That's right. That's right. That's the bass ukulele. You can't see
the bass
it.
Ukulele.
There it is. There it is.
Right. I want to hear it. Okay, but thank you very much, everybody, for joining, and thank you to the panelists and Diane. Thank you so much.
And golly, what a day. Enjoy it.
Thank you.